Shalom, good afternoon. Thank you, Jonathan, for this very kind introduction, which I wrote. It is always a pleasure to be here at the best. I want to thank my very good friends, Professor in Baara, David Weinberg, Professor Eitan Gilboa. Great to see you all here. It's also an honor to share this platform with very good friends and prestigious personalities like Elliot Abrams, like Walter Reed, and of course, Abassodor Salai Meridor. And Jonathan, again, thank you for emceeing it. For the sake of brevity, I would compact and answer all the four questions, which are very good ones, and put them all together. I mean, whether President Obama changed the needle or not, what are the prospects of the future Israel-United States relations? I would say that certainly the jury is still out. There are so many factors that we cannot foresee at this moment. But there is a general trend, and from the general trend and the basic or the fundamental, I would say, characteristics, I'm quite optimistic. I'm sure there are enough people here who has the experience, aka age, that remember during the communist times, it was referred to Brezhnev, but I would put it on Gorbachev. It's more, I think, pertinent. 2 months before the breakup of the Soviet Union, he was asked, can you tell us what is the situation in the Soviet Union in one word? He said, sure, in one word, it's good. Well, can you elaborate in 2 words? In 2 words, it's not good. So if I want to paraphrase it and say, you know, if we may be asked today, what is the relationship between Israel and the United States, one may say bad in 1 word, but in 2 beds, it's not bad. And certainly we cannot look at it at the prism of the relationship at the top, although it has some significance in terms of perception. And when the perception is that the White House and the Balfour Street and the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem do not see eye to eye in very significant issues, I would say 3 ones. Of course, Iran, secondly, the Palestinians, and thirdly, the breakup of the Arab world or the Arab communities. I would say if some thought in Washington that maybe Hamas or Muslim Brotherhood is the solution, we believe it's part of the problem. So we have significant issues on these 3 major issues: Iran, the Palestinians, and the Arab world tumult or upheaval. And unfortunately, when foes and friends alike judge the relationship quite perfunctorily, I would say, only through the relationship at the top, they may just make some miscalculations. Foes, of course, and we don't have to be reminded of what is the Hezbollah trying to do up north, not just at the Lebanon, but also the Syrian border, Hamas, and other groups. Friends, even like the French government, may be banking on American avoidance of putting a veto, trying to push a resolution, very one-sided, that Israel will never accept, which I think will also be against American interests, because that would put the Palestinian problem into a freezer for a very, very long time. But this is something which has to be corrected, and I do agree with everyone that spoke here before, that this, certainly General Amidror, that this would be the first challenge for the new government. And for the remainder of the time, even though it's only 18 months, Elliot, but at least these 18 more months are going to be very critical in terms of what's happening in the region, of course, Iran, and also the Palestinians and Israel's position in the international community. I do agree with everything that Elliot said. First of all, about the ties, you were quite right. And secondly, about the lack of Israeli, you know, we have to double up on the Israeli public diplomacy. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that the government is, or the foreign ministry is geared to do that. Lack of funds. You know, governments today have a lot of budgets, but not real funds, bureaucracy and other problems. This is why I think we have to really do it from grassroots, NGO, non-profit organizations. And this is why, if I can just plug in the truth about Israel, this is one organization that I established, is to work in the social media, reaching 3.5 million people. This is the way to do it, absolutely. And we have to repeat it every day, because what is the challenge today is a political warfare that the Palestinians and their collaborators are waging against us, which also, at the end of the day, and I believed only in the fringes, but it's still, we have to nip it in the bud, could also affect American attitudes towards Israel, because this is what they really want to do. The campuses, I don't know if you saw the article in the New York Times, is quite true. And we see a very dedicated campaign. And if you encroach on the support of the young leaders, certainly that could attest to some changes in the future. So we certainly have to counter that. And the Palestinians, and it's not just by happenstance that we see all of a sudden fringe groups, whether it's the Presbyterian Church or whether it's the American Studies Association in the academia or some other groups or SodaStream. We have to connect the dots, because what the Palestinians have been doing for the last 30 and 40 years in Europe has paid off for them, because we have pretty much lost Europe on the PR. So if you're a Palestinian strategist and you have Europe, of course you have the Muslim and the Arab world in your pocket as a given, where would you go? You go to the United States. This is why we have to understand that this political warfare, especially in the United States, we have to do much, much more. Unfortunately, the government is not capable enough, and this is my appeal, is for everyone, every Israeli, every supporter of Israel in the United States should really gear up and should do its share, whether it's, and today it's very easy, through the internet, through sharing, through Facebook. It is very, very important. And here, as Elliot said, we have to repeat things. History is so easily forgotten. Now, if you have also the lies, and I can tell you here that the Palestinians use nothing less than what Goebbels did in terms of propaganda. And the Goebbels theory is if you repeat a lie 1,000 times, it becomes the convention, it becomes the truth. This is why we have to counter it, not to leave any stone unturned. So this is for all of us here, for our families, for our friends, for students to do. This is very, very important. If we really want to keep this great relationship, which is really a natural relationship, a natural alliance between Israel and the United States. But what we have seen so far, certainly in the last 30 years, we saw almost a perfect alignment between the political interests between Israel and the United States and the strategic ones. The political ones, it's obvious, it's the demographic in the United States, it's the shared of values, the shared of ethos, I would say, the Jewish community, the evangelical. I would say based on what we've heard before from all the statistics, I think we should do two things. First of all, build more churches in America. And secondly, extend the life expectancy of Americans. I think if we do that, I think we are ensured of great support for a long time. But short of that, we have to look at the strategic alliances, because this is, on the political alliance, I am less concerned, because there is a very healthy foundation of support for Israel from all walks of lives. And I believe that the strategic one, this is where we can drift apart. And we try to look at things, at the Middle East or at the world from Washington eyes, and whether it's Obama or whoever will be the next president, Republican or Republican, we see few things. The energy independence of the United States is actually pushing away the United States from the Middle East, number one. And secondly, the pivoting or the more interest in Asia, the rise of China, the challenge to the United States from that section of the world, the prospects of markets in Asia, not in the not so much in the Middle East, may actually pull away or push away the United States from the Middle East. What still keeps the United States in the Middle East, I would say, is international terrorism, also targeted at the United States and United States targets worldwide, proliferation, mainly Iran, and the upheaval or the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. But with the taking precedence of Iran and the violence, the very violent breakup of the Arab countries or the Arab world and the ramification, I would say that the Palestinian problem has become more of a symbol, kind of an inertia, but not a real, not the real weight that it used to have or used to be thinking about its influence on the strategic interests of the United States, of Europe, certainly of the Arab countries, the Sunni Arab countries around it. And we see the difference now in the attitude of King of Jordan, of the Saudis even, and certainly of Egypt. So this is something that we will have to calibrate and think together with the United States, because is it good for Israel that the Middle East becomes secondary or tertiary in terms of importance, strategic importance to the United States? I don't know. There are good things and bad things. Less pressure on Israel maybe, because the Palestinian is not being so pressing. At the same time, if the Palestinians continue, and they will continue, to keep up the international pressure on both Israel and the United States, that would be also a negative. Will they be able to keep it up? I am not sure, because there are other bigger fish to fry today, to fry in the international for the international agenda. So, to sum up, because I see I have only a few minutes here, to sum up, I would say these things that we will have to think as friends and allies. And for this, we have to reestablish at the top the mutual trust and the mutual respect. And Elliot and I remember when President George W. and Ariel Sharon sat together, it was, they may have not agreed on everything, but they agreed to disagree. And they would consult prior to taking any major moves. No surprises was the golden rule. I think this is something that we have not seen in the last 4 or 6 years. So this is something which is very, very important. And secondly, I believe that we have to give more weight in our strategic relations with the United States to the technology and to the economy. Right now, if anyone is asked about Israel-US relationship, very high on the list will be the intelligence cooperation, which of course is very important, strategic defense relationship, but economic relationship. How many people know that Israel is the largest trading partner of the United States in this region? Israel buys more American products and services than any country around us, and then most of them together, shy of Saudi Arabia. The technological cooperation should be very, very important for military use and for non-military use. If we look at the challenges of the future for this region and for the world, a world of 7 billion, soon maybe 9 or 10 billion by 2050, we need food security. We have water availability, affordable energy. This is the basic things that Israel and the US can do many, many things together. And Israel here, although it's not an equal partner in size, certainly not with the United States, but certainly we have our comparative advantage in some areas that we can work together. And this, I think, would be, if I look at the next generation of relationship between us and Israel, it's very hard to predict, especially the future. But if I have to predict the future, I better do it for 25 years from now and not for next year. So I would say that for the next 25 years, we will see a shift. First of all, we will see the alliance going on, because it is much bigger than any individual who occupies at any given time the Oval Office or the Prime Minister's office. And secondly, it's because the fundamentals, the demographies, and the political support will continue, but we may have to look for a different agenda, or at least broaden the agenda. I'm not saying that from tomorrow we won't have the defense and intelligence, but certainly we have to broaden the agenda much more on economy and technology. Thank you very much.